friends, I am Dr. Kuldeep Mohadikar. In this video, I will be presenting my 13th chapter from my series Literary Pearls. The chapter is entitled as Shakespearean Romance. A romance can also be called as a tragicomedy. It is the development of medieval period, that is from 1100 to 1400 AD. Romance is neither a complete tragedy nor a complete comedy. It is a kind of the blending of both the two. The very word tragicomedy itself explains the meaning of the form. The plays of Shakespeare's closing years of life, Cymbeline, The Winter's Tale, The Tempest, are called as tragicomedies or romances, we can say. They are quite different from anything that dramatists had attempted earlier. The main characteristics or features of the Shakespearean tragicomedies or romance are as follows. First is scene. In Shakespearean romance, scene is virtually imagined. The scene of the play and the period of action is in no way related to geography or history. Example, in Cymbeline, scene is laid in early Britain, and in Winter's Tale, scene is laid in Sicily and non-existent sea coast of Bohemia. In The Tempest, scene is laid in some West Indian island. Then we come to the plot. The Shakespearean romance. In the Shakespearean romance, the action is quite fanciful. Anything can happen anytime without any cause or without any reason or without any logic. The events taking place in a romance or tragicomedies have no relation between cause and effect. Example, in Cymbeline, there is no trace of the abducted princess for 20 years. In Winter Tale, heroine lives in concealment for 16 years. The plot is complicated in romances, and complication is increased by prophetic oracles, long lapses of time, and fantastic voyages. Thus, the events in them seem absurd and illogical. Then we will talk about atmosphere. The action of the Shakespearean romance takes place in an unreal world. On the whole, the atmosphere in the Shakespearean romances is that of the fairy tale. For example, the venue in The Tempest is the fairyland. However, we are brought back to the reality from time to time. It is this atmosphere makes romance more amusing and interesting. Then we will see characterization. Characters in tragicomedies or romances are not individual, they represent the whole class. The fact, however, remains that the characters of romances are not as strong as characters in other plays of Shakespeare. Imogen, Miranda, Leontes are more artificial than real. In Shakespearean romances, the supernatural element has to play a prominent role. For example, in Cymbeline and Winter's Tale, supernatural element is a character by itself. The character is very different from other comedies of Shakespeare. In this respect, Shakespeare is supposed to have imitated Fletcher and Belmont. In the Shakespearean romances, there are long speeches instead of short dialogues. These long speeches make the complicated action clear to the audiences. However, this is a crude device to be used in drama. Speeches do not sound as a natural course of information between two or more characters of the play. However, Prospero's speeches in the last two acts of The Tempest reach to greater literary heights. Then we can see in Shakespearean romance the spirit of reconciliation. It is present, means in Shakespearean romances are present the errors and wrongs done by man to man, as in great tragedies of Shakespeare. But tragicomedies or romances with resolution. In comedies, Shakespeare uses happy endings only as a stage necessity. He has nothing to do with poetic imagination. But in romances, he uses happy ending not only as a stage necessity but also as a moral necessity of his poetic mind. In fact, The technique of reconciliation is a contribution made by the wide poetic and dramatic experience of Shakespeare. So this was all about from my side on Shakespeare romance, which is also called as tragic comedy. Thanks friends.